Good afternoon, everyone. I know this morning's sessions have been really insightful already, and I hope, even though it's after lunch, we can ignite you with enthusiasm around the retrofit agenda. We've had the privilege of having a number of online discussions around what retrofit in the built environment might be, and I'm really excited to be joined by some esteemed panelists today to discuss this topic. We'll run through a few kind of preset discussions that we've highlighted as we think are priorities, and then hopefully there'll be a bit of time for questions and answers from the audience. But what I'd like to do first of all is just to introduce our panel members that we have with us today. First of all, on the far left or right on the stage here, I'm absolutely delighted to have His Excellency Ali Jassim, Chair of the Emirates Building Council, with us here today. Thank you very much. Dr. Ali is a holder of PhD in Business Management, Masters of Business Administration with honours in Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. His Excellency Dr. Ali has 28 years of experience in leading roles in both the public and private sectors, delivering programmes and projects, and has held top positions in both sectors. He has led and worked with teams on iconic projects in the Emirates of Dubai and on the federal level in the UAE. Examples include the Dubai Metro, Nolcard, Salik, 43 major road infrastructure projects during 2006, enhancing and elevating drivers, training and vehicle licensing services during 2008, unifying driver's licenses and vehicle ownerships over all of the UAE in 2008 and 2009, created and established 2 driving training institutes in 2012 and 2017. He led a government entity and managed a government-owned company providing energy services and worked on the 2 largest solar projects in the region and the world, on a 21 megawatt hours on a single roof and 5,000 villa roofs in 1 year, and made Dubai a leading city in the region in energy services and retrofit during 2018 and 2020. Presently, he is leading the Emirates Green Building Council in the UAE and as a vice chair for the Green Building Councils for the MENA and North Africa region. He is a promoter for green building and sustainability, net zero buildings, and climate change actions, and I think you would agree, hugely experienced to be talking on this topic. Thank you very much. Our next experienced colleague is Mr. Matthew Tribe. Thank you very much for joining us. He's established an approach to city planning, architecture, urban design, and placemaking that delivers solutions derived from detailed analysis, understanding, and appreciation of the evolving demands of modern life. Matthew has worked in many countries on a diverse range of projects and with many skilled practitioners. A recent project located in Ras Al Hekma in Egypt sought to design and develop a regional plan in partnership with the UN Habitat. The master planning principles embedded all of the sustainable development goals promoted globally by the UN. A graduate of Greenwich University London, Matthew has recently joined SNC-Lavalin, leading the planning, design, and engineering business in the Middle East and global building and placemaking practices lead. This followed an 8-year period as the global lead member of CRTKL Arcadis Master Planning, Urban and Landscape Design Group. With over 250 designers, planners, and environmentalists, the group operates in the fields of urban design, architecture, town and planning, landscape architecture, economics, ecology, and cultural heritage. He is currently involved in projects throughout the United Kingdom, China, Middle East, India, and the Balkans area. So really welcome to have you on board.
That about me?
That was about you. I know. Thank you very much. Our next, sorry, just shuffle my pages around. My next colleague is Will Plowman from Foster & Partners. Really great to have you on board with us. He is currently heads up the Dubai office for Foster & Partners. He received his education in architecture from the University of Newcastle and London Metropolitan University, graduating in 2007. Before joining Foster & Partners, he gained valuable site experience on a variety of award-winning residential and educational projects, including Crouch Hill in London and the UK's first net zero carbon in-use school. Since joining Foster & Partners in 2011, he has worked on a number of significant projects around the world, including Sao Paulo's sustainable Brooklyn Towers in Brazil and a 200-meter skyscraper for Marriott Hotel and a private developer in Hangzhou, China. Will has also been heavily involved in the Lana project by Dorchester Collection, a new hotel and residence development in Dubai. The project features a striking contemporary design that seamlessly blends into the city's urban fabric with 7 beautiful gardens. With his extensive experience in luxury and hospitality, architecture, and you were just saying today, obviously, Sir Norman Foster is in the country, and as a practice, you bring a lot of experience to this agenda, so thank you very much for joining us. And finally, without further ado, Stephen Venny is our last panel member here. Stephen Venny works for Mace International as their country director for the United Arab Emirates, and his role is to grow and manage all business activities for Mace International in the UAE. They are a project management and consultancy business here and have a wide range of iconic projects under management for our clients in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Ras Al Khaimah. Thank you for joining us. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the background of our individuals and the kind of experience they're looking to bring to this discussion. We decided when we were looking at this sort of subject matter that really there were 4 areas we thought we should focus on in terms of delivering against retrofit. The first theme really was around regulation and policy change. I think there's a kind of broad recognition that policy is an important lever in kind of delivering the retrofit agenda here. So our first bank of questions will really focus on that. The next thing we thought was important to discuss is the incentivization and financial benefits of the retrofit agenda. Clearly, one of the challenges is getting clients and governments, public sector, etc., to pay for these sorts of changes. So we thought we'd spend some time reflecting on that. We thought it's also important to talk a little bit about definitions of retrofit, targets and innovation. How do we approach that? And then finally, really, what kind of examples might we look at, prototypes here and overseas, to really look to the future. So those are the 4 areas we're going to cover. So starting with regulation, Dr. Ali, I'd just like to start with you. Given your experience, broad experience, obviously, in the UAE, what's your view of the best regulatory practices between the UK and the UAE?
Well, first, I'm honored to be among such esteemed experts and guests at this esteemed university. I think both countries have green building codes and green building standards. In the UK, they have the future home standards, retrofitting standards. We in the UAE also have the retrofitting standards, and we have done several projects. So the similarities in both countries are there. But the best thing to have, is that enough to have? In my opinion, no. I think we can have more. The retrofitting standards should be improved. The Green Building Code in 2019 in Dubai, it was enhanced. The original code was issued in 2008 and it was enhanced. It was presented to the government by myself and when I presented it in 2019 to enhance it and improve it, the reply was very surprising. At that time they looked at it and His Highness, the Chairman of the Supreme Council of Energy, His Highness Sheikh Ahmed bin Said, said, we don't want the market to inflate and we don't want to have a cost on the building owners, an additional cost, an initial capital on the building owner. So just keep it as it is. So the minimum required standards and the Green Building Code. Now, no building permit is being issued without satisfying these minimum requirements in Dubai. And they have Istidama in Abu Dhabi and similar codes in the Northern Emirates. So I think we need to enhance them a bit better, but we will have that balance to make between the initial capital cost and the because the building owners and asset owners and especially developers are sometimes very worried and have a question mark on the ROI, and accordingly they think about it twice. So, but on contrary, some developers have started within their companies the green building standards individually and independently, so they can. An example is Al-Dar project. Al-Dar is doing sustainability projects on their own, and they have their own standards, which is a bit more than the minimum standards.
Matthew, I guess it would be interesting to kind of build on that kind of starting point in terms of what policies you think are essential to encourage the retrofit agenda, and I guess what role stakeholder engagement can be, have that optimized to ensure success.
Yeah, I think, thank you everyone for this opportunity.
Just turn on your mic.
Does that work now? Yes, excellent. Oh, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. And I think as within this week, this is such an important week for the UAE and the GCC, we are in a position where we don't have any choice. I think there's the carrot and the stick approach using regulation and policies to encourage everyone to do better. But really, we are in a situation where we have an urbanizing world. We have to make our cities perform higher, and demolition really is not the option. And it's interesting that some information coming out of London, the retrofitting market is unprecedented in the volume in 2023. And yes, there is regulation and policies which the developers and the landowners have to respond to. However, there is actually an undercurrent from the end user, and the tenant is driving an expectation around the performance of an office, a residential, a school, a hospital. So again, I think there's a layering of, shall we say, incentivization through policy, but also from society. And I think it's a very interesting time for our industry.
And in the context, I guess, of the UAE, are you seeing that in the clients that you're working with, that sort of push?
There is an undercurrent and there's a groundswell of change. I'm lucky enough to live in a place called Sustainable City, which obviously is the first kind of net zero community in the Middle East. And it does what it said on the tin. It actually is committed to the point where I don't even have a car now. So I'm actually trying to put my money where my mouth is and actually driving this agenda through working with all the collaborators in the panel, but also the wider industry, to ensure that we are not the polluter that we have been in the past. We are a positive contributor to carbon neutrality.
One thing with COP that's really generating and moving things forward is we're all sitting here together, not against each other in competitions or submitting drawings, or, this is a time where we can all use that collaboration and be a part of that. I think there's a few things that are really interesting that are happening, especially in Dubai, and I think Al-Qas is a great example if you're over from the UK, but where that industrial area is transforming into a creative zone. I think we need to look on a city scale about retrofitting, not just on a local housing or commercial scale. I think the city scale is really important for the connectivity across the city. I think the instigation of the 16-kilometer cycle track, I think you said you don't have a car, walking to work. This retrofitting the city is really important, and how we move around the city, I think, is something we're really looking at with Foster's as well. In some of our new developments, how do we integrate more amenities within a building so that you don't need to, say, drive to get to the gym or drive to a supermarket? That's all in a more community-based development. I think Right Market is another one, is using these summer periods when it's too hot to have a pop-up space during the winter months, and this type of retail could also be a retrofit within the city. It doesn't have to be building concrete. It can be something that's demantable and rebuilt. So I think that's really interesting. I think just one last example of encouraging developers to look at adaptability. I think on the Elif project we did for Mobility Expo, we actually designed two teams running side by side, one looking at the exhibition for Expo and one looking at what the legacy was and how we could turn that into an office almost the day one of Expo finishing and turning into an office. And I think this allows us to be more flexible in how we design. We had to build higher ceilings and more flexible floors. So I think this has been a built example of it, and I think we should keep looking back to that and building on this.
I'd just like to bring in Stephen. Thank you for joining us. From your perspective, what's Mace's views of the kind of regulatory context and I guess the ambition in the UAE currently around this agenda?
Yeah, Simon. I think there's a lot of talk, but the private sector needs to engage more. What we've seen when regulations were brought in the UK and EU, that it put it on the CEO's agenda, which is most important for the private sector. It brought in funding. So in Mace in UK, we have our Mace Business School now, where we bring in our trusted supply chain to upskill them. But there is more engagement needed from the private sector. And I think if we can get the regulations right, it will engage the market and it'll bring in the funding.
Perfect, good. Just a question that's open to anyone to answer this on the panel, which is this balance between, I guess, the retrofit of the urban environment as a priority versus the sort of retrofit of standalone buildings. I don't know if anyone has a sort of view on how we might address that.
Can I take that? I had a real life example. In Dubai, we were doing 256 buildings, labor camps, with all type window ACs. And the consultant that was hired from the government of Abu Dhabi visited me, and he wanted to just explore how Abu Dhabi government can do 3,000 buildings. And then I told him it's not possible. He told me, why not? I told him, you don't have an energy services company that can handle such a large number of buildings at the same time. So it will take you a long time, and the capability is not there, not even in the US. There is no contractor, there is no ISCO that can handle that many number of buildings. They went ahead, they did the tender, and no one has applied. So the limitation of the capability of the ISCO in the region, you can do a number of buildings, but you cannot do community scale and city scale. It's not possible from experience point of view.
Companies like ourselves, Atkins Realis, has its own ESG agenda. And so every building that we occupy has to perform to a minimum level. In fact, we're pushing that bar higher. So we're demanding from the landlords a higher level of fit out or retrofit or refurbishment and adaptation, because there's a intimate link now between all our reporting as organisations within the industry. And to the point that if we don't perform to our ESG commitments, we don't get the level of investment from the institutions, and if we do, it's at a higher interest rate. So there's a financial incentive as well.
Matthew, again, what are the financial implications for stakeholders in the retrofitting process, and how does this influence the market dynamics?
Obviously, we all have very lofty ambitions in terms of carbon neutrality. I've talked about at individual businesses level, we've got a commitment to our shareholders, but also society at large. So they are very strong incentives. I think ultimately, when we're designing buildings for our clients, the expectation is those buildings will be occupied, and occupied pretty quickly at a price point that delivers the return on investment. And the expectations of end users and even institutional and investors the expectations are so much higher now. So there's incentives coming from every aspect of the supply chain of a building or an urban destination.
Interesting. So, Stephen, kind of coming back to you, what's your view, I guess, again, from Mace's perspective, on how you get property owners to justify investment decisions around retrofit? So, recognise there is a groundswell of interest in it, but, on a practical level from your experience.
A long-term view has to be taken, and that's probably not what's been happening now. Like two of the clients we work with in London is Brookfield and Crown Estates, and we don't take it in a singular project, it's a program view. So what we can do there, if we have a long-term portfolio with those clients, we can bring in the efficiencies from the supply chain through our Mace Business School, and that brings financial efficiency to the clients. So it's to take more of a program long-term view.
Long-term view of it. And Will, I mean, obviously, Fosters have a lot of work in the region and in the city and the UAE. Working with those clients, what do you see will be, I guess, the kind of important considerations for those clients in the future around the retrofit agenda? And how do you support them really getting on board?
Yeah, I think just kind of building on the other responses, but I think there's this big buzzword about stranded assets, and insurance that's coming, and how companies are insuring some of the future properties. So with ICD Brookfield, for example, one of the amazing things that during COVID, that is all let. And the reason it's let is because it's the top LEED Platinum rating. So we're now seeing leading companies coming in and saying, we only want to be in the top energy performing buildings. And that might be on a wellness point of view as well. So I think Ilsam here, who's spent many years designing that one, it's not just about the office fit out, it's about the groundscape, it's about creating public realm. This has also been seen as a really important part of how the buildings sit within the city and creating value to that. So, I think we're seeing in London a lot of stranded assets, and it's how do we learn from the mistakes that have happened there in terms of that existing building and what Dubai is now building and will be building in the future. So I think that's...
Yeah, it's good to see. As you said, it's driven from the end user in terms of some of this agenda, which I think is critically important and in the direction of travel. Dr. Ali, I think, particularly from UK GBC perspective, you engage with lots of industries, around this agenda, and I'm sure they have cost at the front of their mind often when looking at these kind of projects. I mean, how do you kind of build an argument in terms of the cost implications of doing sustainable building or a sustainable approach versus a kind of more conventional building? And I understand, clearly it's good to see that the client's driving it, but also there must be other arguments we have to leverage at these organizations.
Everybody is asking that question. In COP 2 days ago, I was in a meeting with the mayor of Rotterdam, and he asked the same question, exactly the same. Ali, how do you justify the initial capital cost? How do you compare the sustainable building from a regular building? The building owner, the asset owner, the developer won't accept that initial cost to add it up on his bill. If you look at it from the ROI, the normal return over investment, a standard accounting point of view, it will not make sense. But if you look at it from the initial capital cost for a sustainable building will give you a lifespan of a building much longer than the regular building. The regular building in this region will give you 20, 30, perhaps 50, some of the buildings, yeah? And you are an expert in that. But a sustainable building will give you 10, 20 years additional on top of that. A real life example, a business owner has purchased an old building, 20 years, and then what he has done, he stripped the building, he kept the columns, the slabs and everything, he refurbished it, and there is a technology to cover the columns with fiber, polyester fiber, and have rubber on that. And the column will give you 10 additional years or 20 additional years. And they tested it against earthquakes as well. So that technology exists, the technology exists. And if you spread the ROI over the lifespan of a sustainable building, then it will make sense. And perhaps the sustainable building will be much cheaper than the regular building over that long lifespan. I asked an international consultant that question. And he told me, Ali, we can design a building with sustainable elements in it, and we could manage the cost to match a regular building. So I leave it to you to answer that question.
Should I try and answer?
Yeah, go on.
I mean, with our team here, actually, I think the key thing is integrated design from day one, that we're all on the same agenda, not someone trying to push for something else, that we're all in the room with the engineers, with the mechanical engineers, the electrical engineers, the landscape, all with the same. And I think that's why things like LEED really do help, because they set benchmarks at different stages. But I think it really starts on day one with the client, explaining to them that actually the cost of choosing this material over this isn't that different. And we can, drop the ceiling height a little bit in this area to bring the cost of the concrete down. These are decisions we can all make together, but it has to be really joined up thinking. I think that integrated. I think that's what one of the things I've learned in the years at Foster's is how important that is. And we have different disciplines all within one space, and if we're all with the same goal, it's a much easier journey than architects with a different team trying to solve this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge, isn't it? If we can deliver, sustainable buildings now at the similar price point to existing buildings, obviously that will make things easier. But I guess the challenge always is that sort of long-term investment, and I guess it's about extracting value over that long-term period in order to see that return for the investor or the owner in the future. Matt, just sort of shifting slightly to look at the kind of vision in the future, I think particularly your expertise in kind of master planning and urban development, the timescales for those types of projects are decades normally in the making, and
not in this region.
not in this region. But there is obviously a UAE 2050 vision that sits here, and clearly the kind of whole retrofit of an urban environment now that's 20, 30 years old will need to be part of it. But what's your view, I guess, of how that aligns, the UAE vision and that of the sort of retrofit agenda?
I think we have to say that this region learns very, very quickly and pivots very quickly, which is different to the UK. And I can remember anecdotally, which I was working for quite a large developer within Dubai, talking around sustainability. And he said, Matthew, I love what you're hearing. If you want it, you pay for it. I don't need it. However, that you don't hear anymore. It's very much looking around wellness, the quality of life, the performance of the development over many years. That short-term mentality of a developer has moved on, and it's about now investment and legacy. And we're just working for API on Sheikh Zayed Road, and it's one of the first retrofit buildings that we're doing on Sheikh Zayed Road. So on premier real estate where, yes, you could knock it down, and probably GFA-wise times by 10. But no, they're looking at legacy and looking to do the right thing. In terms of the wider master plans, again, we used to look at master plans where the developer was driving the maximum number of units they could get on that piece of land. And the provision of open space, the provision of community facilities, the provision to allow you to walk, it wasn't really on the agenda. But now when you look at some of these emerging and recently delivered master plans like Dubai Hills, the open space provision is enormous compared to even standards and code. The application of a mixed-use philosophy, which allows you to walk to school, take your kids to walk to school or walk to those amenities, is being applied. And I believe that philosophy and that thinking, it will go through all the way through every aspect of the built environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really, you're right, the speed of change in this region, the speed at which they, as a country are able to kind of mobilize to deliver against those agendas is incredibly exciting to see, and great to see that you're working on projects already that are starting to set that agenda.
And I think there's a fine example. If you're a keen cyclist, which I hope you all are, you drive up or cycle up Al Qudra and you'll see the solar park. This is significant world-beating investment. And time is not an issue. It's a commitment to doing the right thing.
Fantastic. Stephen, I guess it's good to hear from our other panelists the sort of optimism and the kind of sense of hope around that, but about the retrofitting agenda and a sort of sustainable future here in the UAE. But what do you see as potential barriers, I guess, to delivering against the kind of targets?
I think we'll all agree that the supply chain in the UAE is not in a great position. I see that as one of the biggest issues we have to come is how to create a supply chain where it can deliver for the clients. That can bring in many aspects of contract conditions need to change to be more aligned to both parties. Efficiency in the market, modern methods of construction have to be brought in, engaged more. So to me, like from the design perspective, that's moving, but now we need to focus on the supply chain. Who's going to build it efficiently? So it's bringing a lot of efficiency into the market.
And would you say there are any kind of practical and good examples from, other countries, other regions, or within the region that would, sort of show good
well,
direction
in
of
Mace
travel?
and UAE, we're going to bring in one of our RB teams in the new year to start in the UAE to drive the retrofit market in the UAE. So we're going to bring everything we've learned from the UK market, EU market, and establish it here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's good to hear. Right
Mhm.
direction. Be good just to reflect, I guess, on other potential case studies or examples that we are aware of that are sort of leading the way. Matthew, what sorts of technologies do you see shaping the future of retrofit? What innovative approaches are being adopted in the UAE and the UK?
The first one that comes to mind is within Abu Dhabi, where all the existing government buildings have been LiDAR scanned to create a digital asset of each of those buildings to ensure that any investment in terms of refurbishment, retrofit, adaptation is actually accurate and it's focused and it's targeted against their sustainability agenda. And just by doing that, that's using technology and the BIM environment to ensure that they can drive a data-rich solution. Interestingly, I've been talking to some prop tech companies out of the US, and they're coming into this region. I think Berkshire Hathaway is here, and other investment arms of very large organizations to see that the application of technology within building systems, building management systems, and high-performance materials is driving a level of efficiency in operations, improving energy efficiency up to 50%, which is driving huge profits. And they see it as a $1 trillion market of adaptation and retrofit.
Gosh, extraordinary. Dr. Ali, can I come back to you, I guess, on the kind of question of case studies, examples, kind of best practice? You've mentioned a few examples already earlier on, but are there others you would like to sort of refer to, either in the UK or UAE?
I'll give you a true story, okay? A real life true story. In 2016, we looked at the most consuming entities in Dubai. And there were 12 entities, government entities, most consuming in Dubai. And I looked at the list, and more than 90% Dubai consumption was from government buildings. So the government decided to become a role model in spreading out retrofitting. And we did retrofit the 12 government entities' buildings. We retrofitted 10,000 buildings. The most expensive or the most consuming electricity was Dubai Airport. And anyway, we studied that and we had the project. But the project was so enormous that no ESCO could handle it. It was above 200 million dirhams. So I said, I need to do this. Dubai Airport is the most consuming electricity or energy in Dubai, and it has to be done. And the saving was enormous, 28%. So I thought about it, and then what I did, I said, if no ISCO can do this, then I need to look at the project from other perspective. So I decided to split the project into elements of retrofitting. So I did the HVAC as a tender, and I did the lighting as a tender. And we managed to award both projects and finance both projects. And the saving was 28% in the HVAC, and in the lighting it was 32%. 32 million and 28 million, because the consumption of Dubai Airport was 100 million approximately every month. So Dubai Airport saved more than 50 million dirhams every month. It's true story. And they started the MMV. I think they passed that now. So their energy bill is back to, and we were taking we were taking our cost from the saving, of course, from that 50 million that they were saving on a monthly basis and paying the finance. So London Heathrow heard about it because of the contacts between the both managements, and they say, we want the same. And it is true. Dubai Airport approached us and they say, we are talking to London Heathrow and we want to do the same retrofitting. That was a success story. And after Dubai Airport, we did the second most consuming, I think it was Dubai Police, because they have so many centers spread out across Dubai. And then we did 100 mosques. So we have a lot of case studies, and they are in the MMV period now, and some of them are over it.
I mean, it's so interesting to hear those examples, but
Yes.
also the importance of, you know, government taking the lead on its own estate
Yes, they
to
do.
kind of deliver that as a kind of demonstration, I guess, to the
Yes.
private sector. And, you know, often we focus a lot on the private sector and what's happening there, but obviously the government has a role to play, not just in delivering that
Yes.
and setting policy, but kind of showing the way forward to
Correct.
you know, to the wider community. So that's, you know, really important, you know, piece of work to see. Absolutely. You know, we've had a good chance to have a bit of discussion on the panel, but we did say we'd leave some questions to the audience if you've got anything you would like to ask any one of our panelists. We've still got a reasonable amount of time, probably 10 minutes, if colleagues would like to ask any questions to our panel members. Either put your hand up, we can give you a mic, or we can or shout loudly. And maybe if you could introduce yourself as well before you answer your question, that would be very, very helpful.
Good afternoon. My name is Adil Al-Tamimi. I'm professor of civil engineering from the American University of Sharjah. Thank you for very good discussion, and you generate a lot of nice knowledge for all of us. But my question is straightforward. I would like to see, you are doing a lot of things here in UAE. We applaud you guys, but we in universities, we don't see that we getting any contribution. And what is the share of universities in these projects? So do we have any share of kind of collaboration, for example? We have a lot of expertise, and we are non-for-profit. Why I'm telling you this? I was in UK before I came here, and there's a good collaboration between companies and the government and universities. They work as a team. Here, there's no team. And so we are left behind. We have a lot of expertise, and we are not competing with companies. Of course, you are doing a remarkable job, and we applaud you for this. But we'd like to have some kind of win-win situation between you. Can you tell, the question is, just let me narrow it down, how much universities or people from universities are working with you guys? Maybe free of charge. Okay, thank you.
I went to 2 universities back in 2017. Harriet Watt University, and not because I'm here, it is true. There was a dean and the British University, and I spoke to both deans, and I told them I have something in mind and I want universities to help me. And he said, what? I told him I want to have a curriculum for energy and sustainability in the university, and I want a university to start adopting that and embracing that, and I want the dean and the faculty to start preparing that curriculum and the courses. And we will help you as a government entity to support you and send to you the experts and the professionals for the courses. And I had a training course which was generating revenue, and I was willing to push that training course to the university so they can sustain the curriculum. Of course, some universities back then didn't have the faculty, maybe enough faculty to develop that, or maybe the knowledge was there, I admit it, but maybe the resources were not there. But the British University took the course, and they are still training. If you Google it, you will see retrofitting training, and they are attracting professionals from the region and India, because that training was being provided once a year. But because of that initiative, now it is being provided more than twice a year, and professional can register. They don't have to wait until they get. And professionals need that training course and the certificate for them to get into the business and the market. Going back to your question, in the same year, and in 2018, I had a collaboration with the American University in Sharjah, and I opened the door for internship and students to come and work so they can get that last semester certificate that they have done field study. And I opened the doors for them to learn so they can come back after graduating and start working in energy efficiency and sustainability. Now, unfortunately, the market cannot wait for I would say students to learn and gain the knowledge for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. It will cost them. But I was willing, as a government entity, I was willing to embrace them for 6 months, 1 year, and then so they can learn, and perhaps they can come back and contribute to the industry. So there are initiatives on a limited scale, but still the idea of having a curriculum is there. Not to prolong this, Emirates Green Building Council is encouraging white papers and encouraging research papers from students and universities. We have members as universities, and we collaborate with them and researches, white paper. We gain from them the knowledge that they have. But doctor, I want to tell you, there is a gap between the academia and the technology and the market. The market is very fast in technology. The academic, I'm not saying they are behind, but in the research, they are well advanced. But the technology is moving very fast, and the innovation is at a super speed.
Building on COP, I think that's one of the things that when we were internally discussing it is, yes, we do need to look not only to the university students, but to the schools as well. We're protecting the planet for the next generation as well. So I think it's really important, discussing with children. In fact, a couple of the calls we had, there's new books coming out, children's books on climate change. If they understand from day one, this is really important. So,
one successful program, Innovate UK, at the time launched a kind of building research program on existing buildings and on the retrofit. And what worked well is you had a kind of government-funded scheme for universities to work in collaboration with industry, and we worked on projects where we were building, it was residential properties, and then testing the performance of those properties as they were completed, and that was then feeding back into the development of the designs for those contractors and architects. And there was a very tight feedback loop between kind of research outcomes and kind of practical improvements in construction technology. And I think there is something to be learned about this. Dr. I'm really interested in this new funding platform that's coming forward, and it's how we kind of provide the network to join those things together. But you're right, and I think we need to build those connections between academia and industry and policy so that we can drive innovation forward collectively. Because actually one of the challenges, which is exactly right, is we don't only need to train the graduates that will be leaving our universities in 3 and 5 years' time, but we have a whole sector of existing professionals that also need training. So I think it's at every level that we need to be working, absolutely. That draws to the end our panel discussion. Thank you so much to our panel members, Your Excellency. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you to the audience for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.